hello there, everyone. Welcome to the latest big episode of The Big Picture. It is your host and your people's champion with 46% of the votes, Jack Graham, because you, the people, want Nightfire as that next remaster, and quite frankly, we deserve it. So let's pray to the gods that it's going to happen, and hopefully, at some point, we'll be sitting there in our rooms playing online multiplayer on that snow map in Nightfire, because that's all I want, along with Rayman 2 remaster, but I won't get that. But we move on, because we're on to a different topic of episode today. Today, also, you've seen the title, you've clicked on the tweet, you've interacted, you've done whatever with our post we've put up. It is The Big Picture deciding what is the best TV sitcom. And as always, I'm joined by the usual panel. He's the winner of the video game remaster episode last episode. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm looking forward to it. I think this will be quite a good topical discussion for us all to have. I'm sure we've all got a very good piece to say. And someone that's always got a bit to say, Rhys Cook, joins us once again. How are you doing?
The real winner of the last episode. Hello.
Oh, that Simpsons remaster trilogy, you'll never let that go.
It's coming. 21's coming.
And next, the man that had to ultimately decide the winner of last episode, as it was for like once in a blue moon, it was a tie between everyone. Lewis, how did that weigh up on you?
You know what? It was a heavy responsibility that weighs on the host to make that decision, but we're all capable of handling that responsibility.
We definitely are. And last but not least, it's the guy that pitched Fallout. He wanted that remaster. He wants that JRPG. It's Stewart Fitzgerald. Blitz. Stewart is the Blitz, unfortunately, this episode.
The Blitz.
He's too busy with his uni work, and unfortunately, he's going to miss the best episode recording of his life. But obviously, it would be him hosting. I would have been pitching, but it doesn't matter. I'm hosting now. Stuart's cracking on. He's going to get that first class honour. He's going to outshine every single one of us. But we batter on. We go ahead. We do what we usually do. So it's just the three boys. It's Rhys, Adam, and Lewis that are going to be pitching their takes for what they think the best sitcom is. But we'll get on to that at the end of the episode, as we always do. But we'll have a brief discussion about why we like sitcoms and what's their kind of best things about it. So I'll go to Lewis first here. What do you like about kind of sitcoms the most? Or is it something that's always ever present on mainstream TV and your kind of streamable TV as well? Is it the laid back nature of it? Is it just something that's just easy watching?
It's actually the opposite. I don't like TV shows like sitcoms that are just like you just throw them on in the background, you don't pay attention. I like sitcoms that are able to sort of shine a light on aspects of society and or life, and bring a new sort of perspective to them, or make them funny and take the strength that it has on us away from us. And that'll be a big center point of my pitch.
Excellent, very very good. That's not the reasons that I'm look for watching sitcoms a lot, but I do see where you're coming from, Adam. I'll come to you next. Are you much the same vein as Lewis, that you like to see what a sitcom can shed light to on issues in current society, or do you just like kind of the laid back nature, that kind of light humour it can bring at times?
I do enjoy a good meta side to a sitcom, but I also enjoy, like you, a bit easy watching. I think there's something to be said about a sitcom that not only you can throw on the background, but also you can concentrate on it, and you can definitely gain something from watching it closely, but then you don't necessarily feel like you're losing anything if you're watching it just in the background. If you understand, you still enjoy it, you still get the full enjoyment, but you can find out more things about each episode if you want, if you concentrate. For me, that's the kind of perfect balance I like with a sitcom.
What about you, Rhys? Do you like the perfect balance? Do you look for one thing more than another, or what is it about sitcoms you like the most?
I'm kind of in the middle, but it depends what kind of mood I'm in. I would say I more enjoy a sitcom that's kind of along the lines that Lewis was talking about, where it's kind of meta commentary and you're talking about like proper issues and stuff like that, but putting them in a funny perspective. but at the same time, sometimes that can be a bit jarring. Like if you watch a show like Arrested Development, I absolutely love the show, but you really need to focus on it because most of the jokes are in the background. Right now, the sitcom that I'm watching is New Girl, and that is just easy watching, and it's fun and it's light. So I do enjoy those kind of sitcoms as well.
Yeah, I like them as well. It's pretty. I think we all kind of have different tastes into what we want for our sitcoms, but we'll get into it kind of first here. Lewis, what have you got?
Well, I was just having a wee think there. Like the way we kind of watch TV is kind of changed. I think this is maybe why I, find something a bit more purposeful. So I don't watch normal TV. I don't just have channel 1, 2, 3, 4 in my house. I have like Netflix and Amazon. That's how I get my exclusive content. So I feel like maybe because I'm a bit more decisive with what I want to watch, that I'd try and pay more attention to it. It was just kind of food for thought that I had in my brain, and maybe that's something that other people are kind of doing the same now that the whole cutting the cord is becoming a bit more normal.
That's fair. It's more so the kind of the ease of access maybe gives folk different perceptions or different perspectives on how they can watch a sitcom, or where they can just be you can just stick on anything, just let it have it on in the background, or if you need to put your time aside to watch it. But that's very true. But we need kind of something I want to ask. I'll start with you, Adam, first. Is that there's all kind of different fundamentals to what a sitcom is. But for you, what's the kind of one thing that makes a sitcom?
It's tough to choose one, but I actually think it's if I have, absolutely had to choose one, I would say it's probably callback jokes, things that are just running jokes throughout the whole series, introduced early on, and they constantly come back. I just think that there's those kind of inside jokes, because sitcoms are good because a lot of them you don't necessarily have to watch from start to finish. You can jump in and out. There's a lot of good shows that are they get constant reruns. I'm not personally a big fan, but I know you love Friends, and that's always on. You can just watch any episode. How I Met Your Mother, shows like that. You can pick it up any time, but then you're rewarded for following the show and watching it all the way through. When you see these little jokes that call back to earlier episodes or things like that, and then it's a good way to reward a loyal fan, I think.
So kind of references. So the rewarding of loyal viewers for kind of references that we made prior before. But I guess that's something you can only really say to a sitcom that's kind of successful, because if it was done to something that was shit, and obviously there is some shit sitcoms out there, there's not really much point for the continuation of it. So I guess the kind of for a good sitcom and for a sitcom to work in that way, the references need to be on point for a good show.
Yeah, a shitcom, if you will.
Rhys, what about you? Do you like a shitcom?
I wouldn't say I like a shitcom, no, but I'm kind of the same as Adam. There's a lot of good shows that make jokes. Community is quite good at making a joke, they make the Ass Crack Bandit reference in season 2, and then the Ass Crack Bandit episode is in season 5, and Arrested Development, like I mentioned earlier, they're quite good at making a joke one episode, and then a season or 2 later, the punchline's made. And I do appreciate that. What I think is the most important part of a sitcom, though, is the comedy. So I feel like the jokes really have to be on point. I think a lot of sitcoms have light-hearted jokes and that, and they're all right. But I really like a joke that'll actually make you burst out laughing, and I feel like that is the most important part of a sitcom. Just want to point out as well to everyone listening, we're talking about live action sitcoms. I don't think that was referenced so far. I think potentially in the future we'll be doing an animated sitcom episode, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, thank you, Rhys, thank you very much. So the two of them there, Lewis, have made points. So Adam likes a good callback to previous seasons in a sitcom, and Rhys needs that kind of standout comedy when he's watching a sitcom. What's that one element of sitcom television that you think's vital for a show?
I was actually going to say the exact same thing as Adam, a continuity throughout the series, assuming you can, make it multiple seasons is really important because, as Adam says, you feel rewarded for being a fan and caring about the show. But when he said that answer, I tried to come up with another one. And the biggest thing for me, especially if you have a long series, is either one, don't be afraid to just, call quits with someone or move on or a completely different direction. But also two, genuine growth in the characters. Like, I want to see the characters change, develop, and almost reflect life and be a little bit different. Like, I don't know how many seasons are in Friends, but I'd probably guess something like 16. I don't know. They're all the same from the start to beginning.
10.
It's an absolute shit TV show. And I would like to see, 10, in like a space of 10 seasons, surely there'd be some sort of like development of the characters and change, and there just isn't. And that kind of rubs me the wrong way, and that's one thing that I quite look for in a sitcom.
I mean, I'd
like
argue there is. I'd argue there is some characters. Not obviously to the extent that you're looking for, but there's certainly some character development, especially with, like, I would say Chandler is one of the kind of most ones kind of a lot of character development. Same with Rachel, especially how she starts and how she finishes. But I do agree. It's probably like, I think Friends is a good topic for discussion with sitcoms purely because it is arguably the model for like how to be successful with a sitcom, but it maybe is one of the worst. Easy to watch, but I think there's a lot of hate that comes with it as well.
I think, to be fair, Jack, it gets a lot of hate from people that maybe have seen far better sitcoms because they're fans of shows that are much better than it, and they're like, well, why is Friends so successful whereas my favourite show isn't? But I feel like the point Lewis made was quite unfair because I do think there is genuine character growth from, like I said, Rachel especially. She grows from being like this, like, kind of snobby, rich, doesn't know how to do anything for herself, crap at work, barista, to this really successful, powerful woman. And, Monica ends up owning her own restaurant, and Joey goes from being, like, kind of lazy and a failing actor to being really successful. And there's huge character growth in a lot of the characters. So I feel like that was slightly unfair and Friends. But, to be fair, I mean, Friends is still pretty poor for what it is. It is very successful. So you're right in saying that it's probably the model of a successful show. But at the time when Friends was out, it wasn't particularly successful. It's kind of found most of its success from reruns and then being put on Netflix and whatever after. So maybe Comedy Central is the reason that Friends is so successful.
See, how I always remember it is that Friends was on E4 for ages, and then it moved to Comedy Central, and Comedy Central just allows it to run for like 8 hours of the day.
Yeah.
And folks still watching it up, because it's something that I look for in a sitcom, is that you can just put it on and just have a shit laugh with it. It doesn't need to be kind of to the point all the time, just something a bit stupid, something that can take your mind off things. And I think that's something that Friends can do well, whilst arguably being shit at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a huge thing that a lot of people look for in sitcoms, like yourself, Jack, is that they really just want something they can throw on in the background and just enjoy. And a lot of the time when Friends is on Comedy Central, kind of before Netflix and that got popular, it, like I said, it was on for 8 hours a day. They would just do Friends marathons all the time, and people would just put it on while they were doing other things, and it just kind of became popular through that because it's so easy to watch. And like Adam said, you can watch any episode you want at any time, and you don't really need to know what's going on before that because it's an episode by episode show, and really the stories are kind of meh.
What about yourself, Adam? We'll continue the kind of topic of Friends. Lewis made mention that he thought the character development was poor, and we kind of brought arguments to counteract that, and we kind of went into conversation about it being the kind of the model of sitcom success and how that show's done well after it's came out, and some shows have tried to repeat it and maybe not succeed as well. Do you think that Friends is an ideal model, or do you think it was a one-time thing and how they managed to strike gold with it?
I think it probably did leave like the blueprint, at least, for sitcoms. It's funny, I had, like, when Lewis said there was no character development and you could have refuted that, my first question that came in my head, Rhys kind of answered it, was if you watched the first episode, then the last episode, didn't watch any in the middle, would you be like able to see obvious like changes in the characters? And I think from what Rhys said, and you could tell me, I personally I've not seen Friends all the way through. It's one of these things that everyone else has kind of seen all the way through, and I haven't. But I don't know if you'd agree with that there is, just from that scenario, Jack.
Yes, I would say 100% there is. There's a clear, especially with Rachel. I think from the very first episode to the very last, if you only watched the two, I think you could see a difference.
Yeah, I think that's quite a sticky thing for just if there was character development or not. I get it, definitely set out a blueprint. I think it's fair to say that, like we've said, other shows have taken the blueprint route, got more successful. I think it does deserve a lot of credit for just giving us that blueprint, though, because you can almost guarantee that the writers of our favourite shows that we're going to mention were inspired in some way by Friends, and at the very least by the structure of it, and it helped them create their wonderful sitcoms.
I think just to finish on the point of Friends, that I think what it does really well that we've not mentioned is the finale of Friends is almost perfect, and I feel like a lot of sitcoms really fudge the finale and just get it completely wrong. Like How I Met Your Mother, the finale in that is probably the worst finale of any show ever. I mean, I would love to say watch it, but just don't watch the final season. It's a bit like Game of Thrones. It's just the finale is just so bad. But I feel like we're giving Friends maybe a bit too much credit now, because Friends really copied Seinfeld's blueprint. So I feel like maybe it's not the reason it was so, like, Seinfeld was far more successful than Friends was, and probably still has more numbers than Friends, but I feel like it just isn't accessible to us over in the UK, so it kind of makes us think that Friends was the most successful, but Seinfeld was obviously the inspiration for Friends.
You brought up How I Met Your Mother there, and I was gonna get onto this in a bit. I'll bring it up now just because you've made mention of it. We've obviously spoke about what we like in sitcoms and kind of Friends, and how obviously it's not successful at the time, but how it's going now, it's like an irrefutable as being the kind of top tier sitcom, like not for its content, but just for how it's perceived and like reception to it from just the general public. It makes it that kind of top tier. But sitcoms can obviously go wrong, and you made mention of How I Met Your Mother finale. I would still argue, even with that finale, I still prefer How I Met Your Mother to Friends. I think the references that they can make throughout that entire show is absolutely amazing. I really enjoy the final season, but that last episode is such a slap in the face to fans, and that is how a sitcom can go wrong.
And you're right. I think the problem with How I Met Your Mother was that the children, the whole story is the dad's telling the story of how he met his mother to his children, and obviously I think there's 10 seasons. There's quite a few seasons. 9 seasons. There's 9 seasons, and obviously that's going to take the course of at least 9 years. So the children from the start to the end were all obviously aged quite a lot. So they filmed the finale at season 1, and they didn't account for any of the growth. They made one finale, and that's what they were sticking to. So all the character growth and all that was just thrown out the window, and the final season just kind of went, well, fuck the fans. This is what we're doing. So sitcoms can definitely go wrong in that aspect.
I mean, again, I wouldn't say for that all the character development, essentially, like 2 of them definitely did, obviously with Ted and Robin,
and Barney. Barney gets a kid, and his whole life changes, and he's now going to be this better man. Him and Robin break up. I mean, spoilers and that, but him and Robin break up, and then all of a sudden, he becomes a big shagger again. So it just goes right back to where he was.
But you apply that, because the baby thing is the end. He doesn't like split up with Robin. So if you provide the argument that Adam did for the whole Friends with Rachel, he had the first episode and the last episode, you only watched them 2. You could see character growth in that way. That obviously in that first episode, he's just wanting to like sleep about in that. But the very last one, his priorities change when he has the baby, and his baby's like his only sole focus.
Yeah, but Robin was his only sole focus. Then Robin and him break up, and he becomes a shagger. and then he has the baby, and then it's like, oh well, now I've got this baby, I'm just going to go back, and it's just like, well, you know, give it a couple of years, mate, and we all know you're just going to go back to it, because that's he's repeating the patterns of going from Shagger to, oh, I'm a nice guy now, then Shagger, oh, I'm a nice guy now, so it's just going to repeat the pattern, isn't it?
So, Lewis, we've had a bit of discussion there, me and Rhys, about where a sitcom can go wrong. Where can a sitcom go wrong for you, and do you have any examples of where it has gone wrong?
You know what? I think I have the perfect example for this, and I think it's even worse than How I Met Your Mother. To me, Scrubs was one of the best shows I've ever seen, and the finale of it was, I mean, it was perfect. It was emotional. It was funny. It just like it blows anything I've ever seen out of the water. And then they came back for another season like 5 years later, and it was complete dog shit. And it absolutely ruined any sort of like desire and love for that show for me, because that final season exists, and it's almost like Game of Thrones apart from, well, before Game of Thrones.
I see. I think I know Scrubs to have a lot of fan reception for it, but as you said, there's been a lot that happened in that kind of final bit that is very counteractive of what the fans grew to like, more so than probably the examples that we've gave. And I think the thing with it is that the fan base is still so loyal to the point before that it's still a success. So I think, before we move to Adam, I think there's something in Scrubs that makes it like so good to that point that the fans, not that they forgive the final parts of the show, but they're still able to appreciate what happened before and still give it that watchable factor.
I mean, they definitely did not forgive. I'll tell you that much right now. But I think, and maybe this is a point I'll make in my pitch as well, there's definitely a sort of overimportance that I think fans have to a show. And I think Scrubs kind of was an antithesis of that, where people were like so invested on this and it ended. But someone like a network sees the popularity of the show and go, well, let's keep this going, let's keep milking this tray. And instead of ending it, they left it. But Scrubs kind of, for me, hits both the points we talked about at the start here, where it's both rewatchable and has and addresses serious topics in a very delicate, eloquent, and deep way. But then also you can just throw it on and watch a couple of tearaway gaps, laugh, and then keep on going on with your homework. Good luck, Stewart.
I never watched a lot of Scrubs. I watched it, like you said, when I would like throw it on in the background. So I never actually watched it all the way through. But I can kind of gather what I think you're going to pitch from what you just said there about what your pitch is. So I'll avoid that sitcom. But what's your thoughts, Lewis, on like reviving a show in general? We've seen it with shows like Arrested Development, where maybe it wasn't successful after it was revived, but the fans desperately wanted it. And then shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which has been successful. Do you think there's much point in reviving a show?
No, I mean, there's definite danger with reviving a show, because there's obviously a recipe that goes into making the show and making what it was as it was known. When you come back X amount of time later, that same ingredients are going to change a little bit, be it different staff, different acting. People have grown themselves individually in our life, and they just become slightly different people, so things don't hit the same. And it depends on, I think the strongest factor would be the writing and the core being there. I think as long as that's there, there is definite reason to do so. But at the end of the day, like, there's a nostalgia factor and a pledge that fans have to shows that if that's not met and then also redefined, it can kind of fail and fall flat on its face, like what happened with Scrubs, where like they kept the core. There's a couple of guys that are still around, and then they tried to kind of redo what they were doing, and it just didn't work. And I think that's kind of, it's a very, very delicate balance, and it's such a fine line to try and hit. There's definitely more examples of failure than success, as you kind of outlined and teased a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think in Arrested Development, for example, they brought the show back quite a few years later, so a lot of the cast had grown up, especially maybe in George Michael was played by Michael Cera, and they were really young when it first came out, and then they were like teenagers, late teenagers when the remake came out. And but then for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, when that came out, when that got cancelled and then it got like brought back very soon after because the fans just went mental straight away. So it never really lost its touch. So you're probably right there, Lewis.
So on that note, I think we'll go to our last kind of topic of discussion. Just a bit of fun with it. We'll talk about our earliest memories of sitcoms before we go to our pitches. So I'll come to you, Adam, first. What's the earliest memory you have of watching a sitcom, or maybe even like what you didn't realise would have been a sitcom at the time? Because I'll say probably that based not on that, my earliest memory is probably Drake and Josh. Like, even though it's kids, it's Nickelodeon, it is in its essence, it's still a sitcom for what it is. Most folk probably will think Friends, but for me, it's Drake and Josh. What about you?
I'd say probably first one I could think of watching is like watch stuff with my dad. So probably like Fawlty Towers or Only Fools and Horses. Like very kind of early.
Nice.
Or like that's actually what a lot of people would say that. A lot of people, my dad would say that's kind of prime British television. And obviously had Vicar Dibley and things as well. I didn't maybe enjoy them as much when I was younger. It's funny because I would look back and watch them now and I could really appreciate the comedy, especially something like Fawlty Towers. That's definitely something I didn't understand much when I was younger. But I get maybe it planted a seed. But I think it's interesting that a lot of us are bringing up, obviously we're almost exclusively talking US sitcoms here, and we've not really brought up a lot of British sitcoms, but I think it's just because the tone of comedy is probably different with that. But I'd say if the first time I chose or remembered to watch a sitcom, you'd maybe say like the In-Betweeners or something like that.
In-Betweeners is always a classic. We're talking British sitcoms as well. Gavin and Stacey. I rant on so much about how much I love Gavin and Stacey. But I wouldn't have pitched that as the top tier. The UK Office is very good as well. I think there is that with what I'll say here is that with a sitcom, I feel that a UK sitcom doesn't have as universal appeal as what a US sitcom can.
No, it's very niche, and I think that's kind of why it gets successful in the UK. Like Still Game, for example, or anything like that.
Dairy Girls.
Dairy Girls, Still Game. Well, I mean, to be fair, they are regional, kind of like the region is part of the comedy.
Yeah.
But like most UK ones, they just don't quite click that universal appeal where like not only in the States but other places in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, like they all can kind of like just hit in. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely going to be pockets of fandom across the world, but it just doesn't have that quite wide scope appeal as some of them do have.
You see in like America. Sorry. So you see in America, they try and remake a lot of the stuff that we do. So
that's what I was going to say.
They've done In-Betweeners, and then they've done.
Are they doing Shameless?
Yeah, they've done a Shameless. I think they only went one season. They tried to do a Skins as well. That only went one season.
That would have failed. I don't watch a lot of like normal terrestrial TV, so things like Gavin and Stacey I've never ever seen. Kind of once I hit the age of about like 15, 16, like I just didn't have a TV anymore. So I get most of my stuff from like streaming services. So that's maybe why I get a lot of my stuff from. But like things like you couldn't do like a US Gavin and Stacey just because like the comedy for Gavin and Stacey works exclusively in the UK because people can go, that Captain America gift, like, oh, I got that reference. Like that's how that a lot of British comedy works, and just it doesn't work across.
So what about then, Lewis? Well, I'll keep it with you. And we're talking. Adam gave us his kind of earliest memories of a sitcom. If you've got a different take to arguably what us three have? What's kind of your earliest memories of a sitcom?
Well, it's a bit different. From what I remember, I'm trying to think of the earliest one. So there's a few memories that come to mind in terms of earliest TV. The first one is watching the A-Team. I don't know if that really counts as a sitcom though. And then with my mum, it used to be part of our evening routine when I was, like 5, 6, 7, 8. We'd watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Kenan Nickel, and Saved by the Bell. And then she'd watch like Emmerdale, Coronation Street, whatever was on after that. Those are sort of like my earliest memories. But the other ones I can remember is watching Scrubs while I was doing my, exams at high school. Like those are kind of memories that I think of. And I don't know if like the first 4 really count as sitcoms, A-Team and Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Saved by the Bell and that. But yeah, that's what I've got. A bit dated.
It's interesting. It's good that we all kind of have like different earliest experiences. What about yourself, Rhys?
Like yourself and Lewis, the first ones that I can remember, but I don't really think they count on because they were on Nickelodeon and that were Keenan and Kel and then Drake and Josh. The first actual sitcom that I remember watching, and I think I watched when I was quite young, was Malcolm in the Middle. So that's some stellar TV. So I'm proud of myself for that being the first one I watched.
So I think we've spent a good half hour or so there talking about just sitcoms in general, and it's probably a bit of preparation, maybe a bit of insight to some of the stuff you've said to how the pitches are going to go. And I can't be asked bringing up the wheel this time to decide who's going to be pitching first. So I'm just going to go in reverse that a bit alphabetical order. So Rhys, take it away. You're first to pitch. What are you bringing to the table as the best sitcom?
The best sitcom. When you said reverse alphabetical order, I thought you were going to go to Lewis first.
And even then, he's still not done it in alphabetical order.
Yeah, well, not Jay. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, that's B. Anyway, the best sitcom. So the sitcom I've decided to pitch as the best sitcom of all time is my personal favourite. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I could talk about this show for hours, so I am wary of that, and I'll try and speed through the reasons behind it. I think Sunny is the best sitcom for 3 reasons. First, it's an anti-sitcom. It's got meta commentary, and then the dark humour. So before I get into those, I'm pretty conscious of the fact that I don't think any of you have actually seen this. So I'll let you know who the gang are. So there's 5 members, which consist of 2 twins who are serial, word I can't say because this podcast will be blacklisted, but begins with R and ends in a 5-year sentence. A homophobic, transphobic, Catholic gay man, a drug-addicted, illiterate stalker, and a cash-rich, nihilistic, whore-banging sociopath. So that's the team. Right, okay, so now that you know the gang, let's start. Dark humour. There's some outrageous Sunny episodes. In season 1, they make a false allegation that the PE teacher was a pedo and molested them. There's an episode where they exploit abortion rallies to pick up girls. There's an episode where Charlie pretends to have cancer so he can get a pity date out with a girl that he stalks. There's an episode where the gang make a terrorist video and send it to a Jewish landowner before burning his property down by accident, of course. There's an episode where Dennis and Dee quit their jobs to exploit the welfare system. 2 episodes later, Frank gets Dee and Charlie addicted to steroids before giving someone a cheap shot which kills / paralyzes them. We don't actually know what happens because Frank runs away. Now, you may be thinking, Rhys, the show's 14 seasons long, so it's bound to have some episodes which might push the borders. Well, that's just the first 2 seasons, and it doesn't get any better after that. It is ridiculous how dark some of the episodes are. Literally, the pilot episodes, which was free, they didn't have any money. They made it the night before and then gave it to Fox, and they were like, this is brilliant. The pilot episode is about racism and homophobia, and then the second episode is about abortion. It's crazy. The show's constantly tackling issues which most sitcoms would steer very far away from, which brings me on to why it's an anti-sitcom. The show doesn't follow any normal sitcom tropes. There's no character growth. There's definitely character development, but there's no character growth in the sense that when Dennis has a baby, he isn't all of a sudden a changed man like when Barney has a baby in How I Met Your Mother. You're not backing the characters in this show. In fact, when you're watching some of the worst people in the world, so you're constantly expecting them to do the worst things. It's not like a normal sitcom where you've got like a Joey Tribbiani, a Barney Stinson, or a Jeff Winger who start off as a sociopath and end up as a loving member of the group and a respectable member of society. I don't care about all that. I want to see these people be the worst. Best of all, I think the thing I appreciate the most, there's no will they, won't they. The only time any of the gang get together is when Dee R-words Charlie, which brings me on to the meta commentary. So quickly, there's an episode where the gang tried desperately to win an award for Best Bar, which is obviously a metaphor for the fact that they've never won an awards. So they're trying to win an award for Best Comedy, like the Emmys or whatever. So they go to other bars and They take tips, so they boost up the lighting, and they've got bright lights, make light-hearted jokes, and Dee and Mac have a will they, won't they, like role in the bar, which in itself is quite meta because they're married in real life, which is making fun of shows like that do win all they want, like Modern Family. There's an episode where they discuss cancel culture by playing laser tag, which obviously makes fun of How I Met Your Mother, but the show is one big discussion on how Big Mo's coming to get them, and they need to change their strategy or else they'll kill them, but they ultimately decide that just keep doing it how they're doing it. Even their Clips episode in season 12 is meta. Instead of doing a bonus Clips episode, they pose the question of what is a memory and start misremembering situations, followed by fabricated memories by remembering them as the cast members of an episode of Seinfeld. This then leads them to being trapped in each other's minds, and it creates what I think is the funniest joke of all time, where Frank, who's played by Danny DeVito, they're in Frank's mind, and he's got long legs, and he says, "I've always had long legs. There's a bird in being tall," and it makes me burst out laughing every time I hear it. Which also in this episode create a split in the time-space continuum, which creates two Charlies. So I absolutely powered through that as fast as I could. It's Always Sunny is the funniest meta anti-sitcom of all time, and with 14 seasons and being renewed for the 3 more, making it the longest running live-action sitcom of all time, I think that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is the best live-action sitcom of all time.
Interesting. I've watched a few episodes before. I've never gave it enough time, I don't think, but I think that's because I'm so used to just putting a show on and just having it on in the background. I think it's something that I probably do need to watch. But the only thing for me with even not seeing it, I only know it for 2 things, and that's Charlie Day and Danny DeVito. I don't know much about the show itself. I just know that they 2 are on it. So I don't know if it's because of they 2 they have like just there's great characters and they play it well, or it's just because the two actors are so good in it that it helps the show. But that's just me giving an opinion, not having seen the show. So maybe I shouldn't give an opinion at all. But
to be fair, when the show was created, it was created by Rob McElhenney, and with the help of Glenn Howerton and Charlie Day, and all of them were failing actors at the time, and they didn't have any money to their names, and they were all working waiting jobs while being actors. So it kind of made Charlie Day famous through this show, and it made all of them really successful. Now Rob McElhenney owns Wrexham FC, so I think to be fair, that is probably a good point. That it doesn't have maybe the cast that other shows might have, because they were all failing actors at the time.
Well, what about yourself, Lewis? What's your thoughts on Rhys's pitch?
I've never seen the show, so I can't really comment too much about it. But the way he says it would kind of be something up my street. I do appreciate shows that are able to tackle and discuss very complicated, difficult subject matter and make them funny. As an individual, I feel like that takes a lot of power away from things that we let have power over us, and if it handles it in a good way, I'll give it a watch. But yeah, no, it's definitely a good pitch and definitely good telling of the story of the show.
Thanks.
What about yourself? What about yourself, Adam? Do you have any kind of counter arguments or a different opinion to what Lewis might have there?
No, I enjoyed dark humour, so I think a show that specialises in it, it's definitely something interesting. I think Rhys definitely lent in the strengths of the show, and we both will discuss how we like things that are a bit meta.
But it's our next pitch, Lewis. Take it away. What do you pitch as the best sitcom?
Right, okay. So, kind of like Rhys, it's very difficult to encapsulate the magic and the wonder of this TV show, but I'll do my best. So, my show that I am pitching for best real sitcom is Community. Whoa, here we go. Let's see if I can get this done right. So, there's a magnificent history of excellent sitcoms that have graced our screens, and because of that, certain tropes have become standard, repetitive, and leads to certain shows feeling almost identical or dated or stale. Community, on the other hand, I feel stands kind of above head shoulders as something unique, different, but still maintains classical elements of the sitcom storytelling genre. The show is backed by one of the best comedic and philosophical minds producing entertainment today, Dan Harmon. The premise follows a slow group of various age, races, and gender as they go through community college, a place where nothing is quite what it seems. Whilst there's additional elements sometimes noticed, like, the two attractive members must sleep together, someone has to be the comic relief, etc., Community turns these around in a way that makes us reflect more on life. Abed, for example, is, instead of being the kind of typecast meaning relief, acts as a sort of window through the fourth wall, communicating to the audience. Abed takes situations the group finds themselves in and likens them to be on a TV show, which we playfully know that they are. This is because Abad fails to understand real life, so he tries to see it in a way that helps him understand. The perfect line is, "I can tell life from TV, Jeff. TV makes sense. It has structure, logic, rules, likable leading men. In life, we have this. We have you." The self-aware commentary Community provides adds an entirely new layer to the method, but also people tend to go to TV and see themselves in it. Community reminds you that life isn't fixed, it isn't so clear, it's not like formulaic, and it wants the audience to know that 1, that's okay, 2, it can be funny, and 3, don't worry. Another favorite aspect is the kind of spoof pop culture references throughout. The way Community is designed, it allows them to take the same tried and tested formula for other genres and use them for its own purposes, like the Western style paintball episodes, or My Dinner with Andre / Pulp Fiction episode, the mafia movie genre, the horror genre, and so on and so on. But these spoofs also don't forget the key ingredient, the character and stories. They develop plot lines, grow characters, introduce new ones, and so much more. They are consequential, have meaning, and that's one thing Community does so well that every episode counts. It's no filler, all thriller. The continuity and effort put into Community cannot be understated and demonstrates the true love and care put into the show, and that shines through on the screen. Community has redefined the genre and continues to have impact on the genre 10 years on. It helps provide light to how we interact with pop culture and media and how we place ourselves in relation to it, aka not putting such a massive emphasis and meaning towards it. The show was so loved, the audience saved it twice. We get to see the excellence of some comedy heavy hitters and some of the most talented people in the field all come together for a project well cared for. The show redefined the genre and meaning and wants you to think about it. And over the 100 odd episodes, it's difficult to encapsulate the strength of the show, and it stands out perfectly rewatchable and enjoyable. Not rewatchable because someone buys it and plays it on E4 all day. Community takes the best of the genre and the worst and redefines it. And for that, Community is the best sitcom.
Now, I know all 3 of your loves for the show Community after doing 4 years of uni with you. You speak about it a lot, and you do love it a lot. But the one thing that I need to say, because I've not seen the show and I've always wanted to watch it, for some reason just never got round to it. But the one thing I would say that I would maybe I would find to kind of hard. I think it was a really good pitch, but I have heard all 3 of yous, maybe more so Adam and Rhys, because I think you're a bigger love it. Not a bigger love it, maybe not fair to the show, but there's certainly points of contention of seasons that are shit.
Well, season 4, the
Excuse
Gas League era, is the Jim Belushi of seasons.
Exactly.
Yes, it's season 4.
There's definitely a shortfall in it, but I mean, to be fair, in every show there's always going to be ups and downs, and I mean, it's not the worst. There's definitely shows that have failed worse, but yeah, there's a downturn. I can't talk it away or make a counterpoint, but yeah, I can see the criticism there, but in the day it still has its moments.
100%.
Can I defend you here, Lewis, or your pitch here?
Well, sir. I
think season 4 is arguably one of the worst seasons in any sitcom of all time, just because of the standard, especially season 3 of Community. But the actual standard that the first 3 seasons were at, season 4 was so far below it. And Jack, you might not know this. It was because they fired the show writers and hired new ones, and it was all down to controversies surrounding, maybe him being inappropriate to female workers and that. But he has come out and apologised, and she has come out and accepted it. And he was also suffering from alcoholism at the time, so it was notoriously difficult to work with. So they fired him and hired new writers, and it didn't work for them. The puppet episode is probably the worst episode of any show ever because it's just so bad. But season 5 and 6 are really good, and I think that the finale of Community is one of the best finales in any show ever. So it is worth watching after that, and maybe other sitcoms that where there's a bad season, it never picks up after it. This really does pick up after.
I just want to say I've never heard Rhys say that season 6 is great. In fact, in uni we had many arguments where he used to say season 6 was definitely not great.
Yeah, I didn't used to like it. I rewatched it recently and I found myself really enjoying, particularly the finale. It does have one of the best jokes, the last joke in the show where it's the board game within a sitcom,
yes,
within a TV advert, which is just brilliant. So yeah, it is really good. But Adam, do you have any questions for Lewis?
But you know, do you know what? I love Community, and it's hard. It's hard to pick that pitch apart as well, especially when he covers all the good points. And I would just say, great pitch, Lewis.
Adam, take it away. What do you think is the best TV sitcom?
Thanks, Jack. For me, the greatest TV sitcom of all time. This was a hard one to choose, mostly because I was going to choose Community. But when I found out Lewis taking it, and I sat down, and I knew what my second choice would be straight away, and it's Parks and Recreation. However, when I sat down to write the script for this, I realised that I do think, objectively, it is a better sitcom. You know, maybe it was just the fact that I had to believe in it to write about it, but I definitely convinced at least myself that it was a better sitcom. And I just think we've talked about the key features of a sitcom. We've talked about running jokes. We've talked about strong casting. We've talked about a real set character development. I think it has all of that. For just briefly say those that don't know, it follows the Parks and Recreation Department and local government. We're going to talk about its writing. It's genuinely funny. I think it's also a political satire, which I think is quite impressive because I'm not going to bash American writers too much, but there's obviously maybe 2 notoriously successful political satires shows in America, with The West Wing and Veep, and one of them was written by a British writer who also wrote The Thick of It. I think this pokes a lot of fun at how difficult it is to work in local government, but I think it also reminds us that the people who are passionate and work in local government are sometimes our greatest allies as a community, and maybe we don't really see that enough. I think for me, one of the real unique strengths of the show is that it's never afraid to push its characters into unfamiliar situations, unfamiliar environments, and see how they react. I think the fact it's willing to do that is why it has a really complex set of characters that you feel like you know by the end of it. You feel like you know everything about the Parks and Rec department. And I think if we were to look at the exceptional performances throughout the show, I mean, I could list the whole main cast. There's some really good actors and actresses in this, but I actually think my favourite is probably Rob Lowe. His development as a character, the way he goes from this kind of busybody and hyper energetic busybody to a hyper energetic family man. I think he's just. It made me emotional when I watched it. I don't know if Rhys or Jack will agree with me. I know they've watched the show. I'm not sure about Lewis. And I think we briefly mentioned Friends ending. I actually think that Parks and Rec has the best ending of any sitcom. I think it literally ties up every character arc. They've all had the appropriate time. I think we aren't left asking questions about what's happening next. I think it feels like a complete story, a complete arc. And I think it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy to write a show like that, but I think that being able to write 6 seasons and then have them end conclusively and satisfyingly, I think is just a real testament to how great this show is, and that's why I think it's the best sitcom.
I think that absolutely love Parks and Rec, and I think the thing that always stood out with me is that a lot of sitcoms, with the exception of Scrubs, I think, because folk wanted that fixed after what happened, but with sitcoms when they're kind of done, not that folk are wanting to end but when they do end, they're kind of happy with it. Parks and Rec to me was always something that folk wanted to come back all the time, and that's just a credit to the show itself. I don't know what your thoughts on this is, Rhys.
I fully agree. we see the brilliant work of Michael Schur here from, we know from the US Office and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And Adam's right. I do think this is potentially one of the, if not the best, ending to a sitcom of all time. It ends at the perfect time. It doesn't go on longer than it should. It ends really well. Really, there's no loose ends whatsoever. And I think that it's just brilliant writing. And Michael Schur says to himself, or says a lot, that it has one of the best jokes of all time, which was unscripted and off the spot by Andy Dwyer, which is played by Chris Pratt, where he says he typed in the symptoms into, or Leslie's symptoms into the internet, and it came up with network connectivity errors, and that's one of the best jokes as well. That always gets me going. And I think, like Jack said, people are always wanting it back, but there's no way to get it back. And they've talked about potentially bringing it back for like a movie or a one-off episode, but there's no way for them to do that because they ended the show so well. There was no loose ends.
Well, they did the COVID episode though, didn't they?
They did do a COVID episode, but I think a lot of shows did a COVID episode to make people feel better.
I think I just said that it has ended, and it would be so hard to bring it back. But I still think that's arguably even more credit to the writers with that for having that such a conclusive ending that people are still wanting more of it. Like they're finding it hard to accept it's over, but it's not often that you see a lot of folk wanting that show to continue once it's done, and you certainly see that with Parks and Recs. What's your thought, Lewis?
So I have only seen season 1 of Parks and Rec. I started watching it during the dissertation era back in, I don't know, whatever PTSD year that was, and
2019.
I enjoyed it, but I never remembered it. It came out. I was quite forgetful for me. That being said, though, I know Parks and Rec has so many quotable moments, memory-induced moments, especially because some of the actors are now like well revered, and even some of the things they did during the show, it just becomes so viral. But after season 1, I just never clicked in my head to go back and watch it. So unfortunately, I can't really offer too much.
Lewis, I just want to add on to that. I said to Adam recently about Parks and Rec, it was similar to Community in a sense that it had one season that was just terrible. And Adam wasn't aware of this, and it maybe because he watched it more recently than what I did. But when season 1 came out, it was before it came out. It was called Untitled US Office Spin-off. The season 1 is so far detached from the rest of the show that almost instantly in season 2, I would say within the first 3 episodes, there's a huge shift in the way that the show is made, the way that the characters are portrayed. There's huge development from characters like Leslie and Tom, pretty much within the first 3 episodes, that makes the show a million times better. The first season is so far so different to the other episodes that it's not comparable. So I would recommend watching the rest of the show, Lewis.
Nice.
I will get around to it at one point.
Sorry.
I will.
I'll just come in and I will talk about season 1. I haven't spoke to Rhys, and he's right. I didn't know it got such a terrible reception. What I would say is that we've already mentioned that if a show could come back from a weak season, it's impressive, and I think it's even more impressive to come back from a weak first season. I think if the foundation, a lot of people say if the foundations are, it's expression. I mean, I'm not sure it's the expression. I butchered it. If the foundations are rotten, you can't build anything on top of that. But in what was an admittedly weak first season, Parks and Rec built one of the greatest shows ever, and I think that is truly impressive, and it's a real credit to the writing. Michael Schur, as we mentioned, really, really impressive. Also, you could say that there was definitely the kind of the gems, if you want, the sparks of certain character arcs. The whole theme of like local government being slow and frustrating to work with, but actually quite often having your best interests at heart. I think that was definitely established. You could say things about April's apathy, and And there's a few other things. Obviously, the running jokes with Jerry as well. There's definitely a few things that were established, but I agree it's definitely a weaker season. But I think it is quite impressive that they went on, and I would say that's my kind of counter to that.
Just to pick up on Jack's point as well, he said that when a show wants you leaves you wanting more, that's always great. Community, to its credit as well, people are still wanting the movie. 6 seasons in a movie, it's talked about pretty much every day in the fan base. So it's a credit of Parks and Rec. It's also a credit of Community, and then you got to say it's a credit of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as well to be renewed for 3 more seasons, to have 17 seasons, fans still wanting more that late on in a show is brilliant. So I think all 3 of our pitches have been really good, and you're right in saying that, Jack, that if it leaves you wanting more, that's always the hallmark of a great sitcom.
So on that note, I will let you send in your pitches as I go through the fans' favourite sitcoms. Colin Moore reckons The Peep Show is the best sitcom of all time, and Ryan Dalglish concurs with Colin Moore. So it's nice to see a British sitcom being included after Adam's discussion in that. Grant McRobbie and David Campbell both agree with Adam that Parks and Rec is the best sitcom, with Adam there. Stephen Wilson, much like myself, thinks that The US Office is the best sitcom. Our long gone but not forgotten member of the podcast, Stuart Fitzgerald, because he couldn't host, he submitted a fan tweet saying that Scrubs is the best sitcom. So that's going along the lines of what you were talking about earlier, Lewis. David Hockney unfortunately submitted The Big Bang Theory, but he did say that his favourite sitcom is Friends. He just wanted to put an alternative, as we reckon Friends would be discussed a lot, which it did. And Lewis, you also made mention that Brooklyn Nine-Nine's a really good sitcom as well, which I thoroughly agree with. But
I think the Peep Show is such a great show. We never talked about that, but the way that they do the cameras in that is phenomenal. I
really do like the Peep Show, but it is the same again as last week. The votes are one apiece. One vote for Lewis, one vote for Adam, and one vote for Rhys. So I get the deciding vote, and
it goes for the only one he's seen.
Well, I mean, as the only one that I've seen, yes, but I feel that with what Lewis and Rhys said, I was able to pick at something, whereas with Adams, I wasn't able to do that.
That doesn't mean our pitches are just better and more in depth. That's all that means.
I mean, I can't go any other way than Adam. I think even in general, without seeing the show, if I didn't have that in mind, I think Adam just did have the best pitch here. So the big picture has decided that the best TV sitcom is Parks and Rec. Congratulations, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks. I did enjoy the other pitches, and I'll go and watch It's Always Sunny now. I do think it's time. Well, I mean, I'm currently watching Spider-Man 1994, but I'll get to it.
You've been telling me that for a while.
Yeah, Rhys, I'll get to it. Don't worry. Thanks for choosing me, Jack. I know it was a tough decision, and don't worry, you can replace that world's best podcast host mug you bought for yourself with one I'm going to send to you. Don't worry about it.
I think I'm along the same lines as you, Adam. When I think about Parks and Rec, when I really think about it, I do generally think it's fantastic. And with Community, I'll never get over how bad season 4 is, and I think that just brings it down. I think if season 4 was at the level that season 3 is, then I think it would probably be the best. But Parks and Rec, the first season, it's kind of like a slow burner, but it brings you to this like brilliant climax, and I think that's why it's probably the best.
I think looking to the future, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is probably going to be the next kind of big one for the next couple of years if they kind of keep that going. But it'll be interesting to see how sitcoms adapt in the future. Yeah, it'll be interesting though, like how things go going forward and how people are willing to tackle things or not, especially in the cancel culture / woke culture.
I'm wondering if Brooklyn Nine-Nine will be the next Friends. It's already got like a huge fan base. People watch it like constantly. I wonder if it'll be the next Friends and people will be watching it in like 10, 15 years' time still.
Well, maybe the big picture will pick up on how to big pitch Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something at some point. I don't know. We'll do, if we do anything.
We could do the
We are
big picture.
shills.
The big picture pitches the Brooklyn Nine-Nine show finale. There you go.
There we go.
The big
But on
picture
that-
pitches Brooklyn Nine-Nine reunion episode 20 years later.
We do end the episode here. I hope you've had a wonderful time. I'll say thanks to Adam, champion again.
Thank you. 2 weeks in a row. It feels good.
I bet it does. Prick. But Rhys, thanks for being here as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for a wonderful job hosting.
Thank you very much. Very, very kind of you, Lewis. As always, thank you for being here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure in being here.
And Stuart, thank you for being here as well.
Well, and Stuart, I'll speak on behalf of Stuart. Yes, guys, thanks you for having me. And my favourite movie of all time is Suicide Squad, and I really like Fallout 76. Back to you, Jack.
Oh, I thought you were hosting the episode there, Rhys. I'm sorry. On that note, we end. Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of weeks where we're doing Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yes, that's right. We're going to be doing a TV series pitch review thing, not 3 weeks after it's over. It's coming straight away. Bang. Boom. There we go. We're doing it. Falcon the Winter Soldier. We'll see you all next time. Goodbye.